Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. My name is Rob Dauster. I have Randolph Childress with me, and we are diving into one of the most successful and not the most talented teams in the ACC, and that is Virginia, who are in a really, really interesting spot here, RC, because they lost two NBA level players in Reese Beekman and Ryan Dunn from a team that was kind of like a two-man team this past season. And they went out into the transfer portal and brought in like four fairly well regarded transfers, none of whom averaged more than 7.5 points at their previous stop. They're bringing back some guys, but it's like some of those guys were the ones that we looked at and said, I don't know if they're quite good enough to be on a team that is playing at this level. But then when you look at what Virginia's done in recent seasons, like they finished third in the ACC last year with a team where we were like, I don't think that they're good enough to finish in the top three in the ACC. In 2023, they finished second with a team where we were like, I don't know if they're good enough to finish second in the ACC with this roster. In 2022, they made the tournament in a year where we were like, I don't even know if this team's good enough to be in the NIT. In 2021, it was kind of the same thing. So like, Tony Bennett just finds a way to win. And I think if he finds a way to take this group and finish like top three in the league and make it to the tournament and win a game in the tournament, just put the man in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. Okay. This is I'm very curious to see your opinion on this roster and your opinion on how the season's going to go for Virginia.
We'll put him in the Hall of Fame because he's going to be in the top three. It ain't no question about it. It is. Say what you want. This team is, I think it'll be better offensively than it was a year ago. It'll be better offensively. Will he miss Rick Beekman? I think, without question, he will. I think he'll miss him, but you're replacing him with a guy like Jalen Worley. I thought, at Florida State, he's a bigger guard, but kind of that non-shooter, gets downhill guard. Ryan Dunn was, heck of an athlete, first round, NBA draft pick. We know all those things, but I just like what they brought in. They brought in toughness. They brought in some offensive guy. We talk about transfers. We don't know what TJ Powell is going to be. We know he can shoot. The reputation. You put a guy like that now, he's stretching a four that stretches the floor in Tony Bennett's offense.
Yes,
is a big. I can't. We just talked about that with Wake and what they don't have. Him knocking down shots and that, for this team will be big because he'll get looks. When they're running that, when they're coming off that wide pin down and they're going to force switches and he's going to pop, get open looks. Just their team is totally different with a stretch four instead of having those two bigs. And so I think this team is just Tony Bennett alone. I thought he should have got more consideration with Coach of the Year. This team struggled. It was hard to watch on the offensive end of the floor a year ago.
that's putting it nicely.
I mean, they were hard to watch. I mean, that was just like watching paint dry. I think there's added toughness to this group. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be better offensively. And again, if he can just get them to the 60s, they're going to control tempo. He's a hell of a coach. We know what he is. And to your example, put him in the Hall of Fame because there's no way in hell I'm not picking them in the top three. I think they're going to contend, if not win it. I think they'll finish no less than top two in the league. I really do.
Yeah, you mentioned TJ Powell. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. That's a little spoiler alert for who I think the X factor on this roster is. But I do think what the interesting kind of, for me, like the narrative arc of this Virginia offseason is that we had criticized Bennett a little bit for maybe not adjusting to the era of the transfer portal. And he did that a little bit last season. He's doing that more this season. They went out and they got five guys: Day Ames from Kansas State, Jalen Worley from Florida State, TJ Power from Duke, Elijah Saunders from San Diego State, and Carter Lang from Vanderbilt, who I think is going to brought in more as like a bench guy than anything else. But my question is, did he get the right guys? Like, to me, looking at this team on paper, what I'm kind of seeing is a roster where he's betting on guys that are going to get better offensively and say, I can, or will make them better offensively, and saying, I can coach them up on the defensive end of the floor. Like, if you're telling me that Day Ames is coming from that Kansas State system and is going to immediately blend into playing the pack line defense at a high level for Tony Bennett, like, that's a big ask. Jalen Worley playing at Florida State, like what they do defensively is like the exact opposite of what you want to do when it comes to playing the pack line. So I think that there are going to be adjustments on the defensive end of the floor, but it looks like he's kind of saying, I could teach them defense better than I could teach them offense. We got to get some guys that can score.
I think it's challenging for him. It was frustrating for those guys. I think they may have acknowledged it this year, if not a few times last year. They didn't know what they were going to get. Some nights it was just Reese Beekman, you got it. Whatever you got, that's it. I mean, the rest of those guys struggled. McNeely was really strong early when he wasn't knocking down shots. When him and when McNeely wasn't knocking down shots, and when Jacob Groves wasn't knocking down shots for those guys, they had no chance. And when teams stayed home, and because Reese Beekman wasn't really a shooter, it was just meet him in the paint. He put those guys on his back, man. I mean, and so, but I do think Worley he'll fit in fine. He's a high IQ kid. He has really great size. This team will have some size to it. Daddy doesn't have to do it, but I think he'll be more of a reserve guard. And I think he'll have time to do that. This, like you said, he recruited just offense. They're going to double the post. They got so many different things that they would do and don't have to do. They can go small. He got 6'8" guys on the lineup. They'll just double the post trap. They'll control the paint. That's what they do. I know no one's worried about them on the defensive end of the floor, but I think he had to. I think the other narrative is going out getting transfers also in the NIL. With the rumors out there that Virginia just didn't play in that area, and then to get the players that they got, they've had to. So they've eliminated a lot of factors about what Tony Bennett will and will not do. He's shown you he's willing to adjust and willing to adapt, even if he doesn't like it. And there's not a lot of coaches that probably likes the landscape of what's going on now. But he's a Hall of Fame coach for a reason. He'll be successful no matter what. And I think this team, because I think it'll improve offensively. I think it's why I think they'll be right there at the end when it's all said and done, because as talented as Duke is, that's a really, really young team when it's all said and done. And this Virginia team will have some level of experience and just let alone with their style of play.
Yeah. So we mentioned the transfers. Isaac McNeely, we kind of know what he is. Blake Buchanan, I think we kind of know what he is at the 5, right? I think Andrew Rhodey to me is the guy where I kind of look at him and say, okay, he had a great year at St. Thomas as a freshman, came in, took him a little while to adjust to the ACC, but I do think that with his skill set and what he can provide, like they need him to get back to being a guy that is more than just like a bench player, 4-point per game scorer, right? Like you played 25 minutes a game, you were brought in there to score. Like you got to score, man. Like you got to do what you're getting. I don't want to say getting paid to do necessarily, but you got to do what you were brought in to do.
Right. We were talking earlier, and you hinted around that your guy may be TJ Powell. I think he's my guy, because he came in with all this expectation of being able to score and fill that void, and he struggled. Let's just call it what it is. He struggled. And a year in the system, you decide to return. I think with the players that are around him, it frees him up a little. He needs to take a step. He needs to take a step. And will he be that guy? That's the interesting part for him. I mean, he's the guy from a reputation and an expectation, from ability to score. He's the guy, I think. I'm not worried about TJ Powell as much. I think he will. He'll get looks. He'll get shots. Like we said before, with Tony Bennett gets a stretch 4, look out. But Andrew Rhodey, he's the guy. He's the key to me. Is does he take a step? And we'll find out early, because if not, then he'll sit. I mean, he'll be a reserve guard with minimum minutes. So I think he needs to take a step and try to get him to be a double-digit scorer for this team.
Yeah, to your point, there are more options this year.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be better options. Some of the transfers they brought in. A guy I really like in Christian Bliss, who redshirted this past season. I remember watching him for, I think it was PSA Cardinals. He played.
Yeah, played for PSA Cardinals.
Yeah, back in 2022. Like I think he's really, really good.
He is.
I think he's a guy that's going to come in here and like be an impact player, probably off the bench this first season, but I think he's going to have real minutes this year. What do you make of him? And then maybe like Jacob Kofi, Anthony Robinson, some of these other freshmen.
I think Bliss will be the guy. It's tough, like you said, transferring in and playing for Tony as true freshman. It's just hard because it's one of those, if you don't defend, you don't play. And
Mhm.
he does not care. He's not sacrificing that. That's just not who he is and what that Virginia Cavalier culture is based upon. So freshmen struggle. Christian coming in there, I'll be interested to see him this year and get his thoughts on that. And let's not forget another big and Anthony Robinson. It's another guy that's there that redshirted a year ago. So that center spot, we don't get a lot of production. That's usually defense and rebounding for Tony out of that center spot. So they'll have depth in that position with Blake Buchanan. We'll get the depth. They'll have bodies, but Bliss will be fine, and Jacob Kofi will be fine. Their freshmen will come in there, and once they just figure it out defensively, we'll see what they give. But I think the red shirt guys are critical because you've been in the system, you know what it's like, you've adjusted to it. Bliss can be that guy that can come in and give them quality minutes and score. I just like what they've done. I think they've had a hell of an offseason. They've answered a lot of questions because this team was crucified getting in the tournament and playing as poorly as they did. I thought it was a hell of an thing. There were rumors swirling around about Tony. Would he even come back? Virginia answered everything with his contract extension. They hit the portal. People with questions, like everything that people questioned about the Cavaliers, I thought they answered it. I think this team is tough. I think they added a level of experience, youth mixed in with their youth. I think they'll be right there at the end of the year when it's all said and done, challenging as they always do for the ACC title.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Like when Tony has a team that probably isn't good enough, they challenge for the ACC title. When he has a team that has NBA players on it, they either win the national title or they get bounced in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
That's so true, though. We don't know which one you're gonna get.
You don't know which one you're gonna get. I'm kidding, UVA fans. I'm kidding, UVA fans. All right, let's talk about the X factor because I do think it's you mentioned Andrew Odie. To me, it's TJ Power simply because oftentimes when you get a guy that is like a top 20-ish kind of recruit that ends up having the season that he had as a freshman at Duke and then enters the transfer portal, it's very rare to me that you see him end up at another program at the caliber of UVA. Like normally it's a little bit more of a step down, right? Where you got to go find a place where you can kind of prove that you are ready for that level and then transfer back up or whatever ends up happening with the rest of your career. But TJ Power goes directly from averaging like 2 points a game at Duke, barely being able to get off the bench, to like directly to ACC rival Virginia, who knows everything they need to know about TJ Power. They recruited him and they saw him play when he was at Duke. He was a bucket in the EYBL. He's a little bit older, like you mentioned, to stretch four. And I think that role in that position is just so important for what Tony Bennett wants out of a team. Like you think about the best teams that he's had, it's guys, and I'm not comparing TJ Power to DeAndre Hunter, but I'm saying that having a versatile weapon at that four spot is so important to what they do, how they want to play, and what makes that blocker mover offense dangerous.
It is because he spaces the floor. His ability, he's gonna get looks. He's gonna get open looks. He's gonna get shots, and you don't have to worry about him defensively because they're gonna protect him defensively. If he struggles on the perimeter, they're not gonna switch with him. They're gonna hedge and recover, and they're gonna trap inside. So he doesn't have to worry about that. He'll have to compete and play, which he will. But what he can do at that spot and his ability to stretch and what he's going to do to defenses will open the flow up for Wiley, for Worley and the guards. I think it's critical for the year. And like you said, the difference of that is like with Ryan Dung. He was an athletic guy, but offensively, you didn't have to lead the paint for him. He was great defensively, but he was a great defender. But offensively, you didn't have to guard him much on the outside. I think that completely flips now with TJ. And I think one of the guys we're not mentioning, we're talking about all these guys. I think that Elijah Sanders is going to be massive for them, right? I mean, you're talking about another bigger body coming in there again. Experienced guy, the program he's coming from with the Aztecs, the wins there, the success they've had there.
Well, they run the pack line too, right? Doesn't Dutch run?
They have variations of it. Yeah, they run some of it. So you're going to get. They did a great job of identifying, I thought, fits and what they lacked. Everything that they lacked a year ago, I thought they went out and addressed that in this offseason. They had a heck of an offseason. And again, that team last year wasn't fun to watch. If he gets any offense, look out. And I think he's added that. If they can just stay healthy, the injury bug bit them a little bit last year. Dante Harris was coming in with all this hype coming from Georgetown with being able to, defend the ball, and he was banged up with an ankle injury. So he usually don't expect as much with freshmen, but Blake Buchanan's coming back a year in the system, a full off season. They're going to have depth. They're going to have everything they need to do to make another run in the ACC, which there's no doubt in my mind. He's just one guy I just don't doubt. It ain't pretty, but it's successful as hell. And I think Tony Bennett is as good as there is in the country coaching college basketball.
Yeah, you mentioned, so the thing that I think was most interesting that you mentioned there was that they went out and addressed the needs that they had from last season, right?
Right.
And I guess the conundrum that I come up with when I'm thinking about what Virginia can be, and we can talk about the expectations here,
Right.
whether or not like TO has them second in the ACC, and like I'm sure you're going to say like second or third in the ACC, and I'm probably going to say the exact same thing for where I think they're going to finish. But my biggest, the hardest, uh, the hardest hurdle for me to get past when thinking that is they went out and they addressed all those needs, but like, did they do it with guys that are good enough? Like Jalen Warley is a solid transfer piece. He was a solid rotation player at Florida State. He's going to be a solid player at Virginia. But when you're bringing him in to replace like Reese Beekman and Ryan Dunn, like, are you getting a guy that's going to be good enough to replace what is not coming back, right? Day Ames, I think is a guy that has a very bright future as a point guard in college basketball. But he's coming in and you're basically asking him to like be Reese Beekman, who was one of the best players in the ACC for the last 2 or 3 years, right? Like TJ Power, I think he's going to be awesome. You're still betting on a guy that averaged 7 minutes a game last year, right? Elijah Saunders came off the bench for San Diego State. So like my biggest thing is they went out and they got pieces that fit. But do they have like, is there a star on this team? Is there enough firepower? Is there enough talent overall to be able to really go out there and beat some of the best teams? Or are they going to be something like they'll win 13 games in the ACC because they're going to feast on like the bottom half of the league and win all those games they should win?
Rob, I answer that by saying, when have we answered those questions? Or those are the same questions you could have said the last 5 years at UVA.
Yeah. yeah.
You know what I mean? And they've done nothing but won. What he gets out of his point guard, in Reese Beekman, he was forced to take shots and be more of an offensive load than they traditionally want. He wants his point guards to run the show and defend. Jalen Warley can do that. I mean, he can be a defensive player of the year caliber in this system. With his size at 6'7", I think he was invaluable to Florida State team. I thought they had all these different pieces, but he just fits. I think he fits more. His transition in that point guard spot, I worry less about his transition than anything else. I don't. I think he's the ideal guy. And when he committed, I thought like, wow, that's a perfect fit. If there was a place I could have said, all right, a guy that's a seamless transition into a program for a guy who is a hell of a defender, an elite defender with size. And that's what Tony Bennett wants out of that point guard spot. He'll get to the cup. He'll find ways to score, to create. He'll have better shooting around him than he's had at any time in Florida State. So that point guard spot, I don't worry about. I just think Reese Beekman has just seemed like he's one of those players that seems like he's been in college basketball for 100 years because Virginia's just been good and he's been there. But for what the resume, for what Tony Bennett wants out of his point guards, he wants toughness, he wants defense, he wants you to run his team. I think that transition is seamless because you got to defend at Florida State, even though it's a different style.
All right. So top 2 in the ACC, top 3 in the ACC. Like, are they winning the ACC? Are
They're
they
right
take
there.
down Cooper Flag?
Yeah, this will be the team I think that contends with them the most. I think this is the team that I think because of their level of experience. I mean, Duke, again, as talented as Duke is, everyone says the bandwagon like it's a foregone conclusion. They got some answers. They got some questions. They are still relying heavily on some freshmen, and I don't care how talented they are, they're still freshmen. And the level of expectation and then playing against a team like Virginia and their style and their physicality. And I think they're raving about this group and their toughness in Charlottesville right now. And that sounds like a Tony Bennett team. When they start talking toughness, they loving their team's toughness, then I'm all on board. And there's a lot of things I question. I would never question Tony Bennett. To see what he did with that group of Jericho.
You leave that for
Him and
me,
Mark
huh?
Few,
You're
him and
letting me be
another
the one
guy.
that questions him.
Listen, it's two guys in college basketball. I will never ever again. And we had interviewed one of the Final Four and Mark Few. I am never ever questioning Mark Few or Tony Bennett again. That's it. I'm done. They got it. I'm bowing down.
All right. Well, look, that's a perfect segue into our offseason grades because on paper, I'm giving them a D plus, right? Just on paper, right? When I'm sitting here looking at it. But you know what? They gave Tony Bennett a contract extension, which means he wants to be there, which means he believes in this group. So I'm going B. I'm giving them a B grade. On paper, it's a D plus. On Coach Tony Bennett's, on CTB's paper, it's a B. I'm giving him a B.
I'm giving him a B plus, if not an A minus. I just love the depth that he added. I think this team, when it's all said and done, those games, I don't know how the schedule break out in their matchups against Duke or Carolina, and it's when it comes to their home and away. But their style always travels. They're a tough out. I think they'll be there. I think this is a team not even sneaky pick. I think they can win this league. I really do. I just think they're just always there. And I don't see and getting a little offensive firepower with this group puts them right there.
Yeah, you're right. Why would I ever doubt Tony Bennett? You talk
stop it,
man.
Hall of Fame, man. Put him in there.
Put him in there today.
Put him in the Hall of Fame, bro. Cut this out.
Listen, this has been another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. We got about 45 of these in the queue, so make sure to check out the Field of 68 YouTube channel. You can scroll through all of them there.